Vajamana Hure Vinandanandana Vaye Naranara Vindare.
Okay, so Hare Krishna, good evening. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you a little more closely to Jamuna Devi Dasi. Not that you just hear the Govindam prayers and read her cookbook or hear some tapes, you know. Well, this is a verse, very well-known verse, Bhagavad Gita, that gives the sum and substance of our business here in this world and how one should at the very end conduct themselves. So this is Attaining the Supreme, 8th chapter, verse 6. Can say together, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tvai shaktiyan kalevaram tam tam evati kunteya saratad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body. Is there a room that we can, maybe is there a room that the children can kind of be loud in, but we could close the door and then we won't have a competition there. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So Srila Prabhupada's purport is very instructive. The process of changing one's process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is herein explained. A person who at the end of his life quits his body thinking of Krishna attains the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. But that is not true of a person who thinks of something other than Krishna. This is a point we should note very carefully. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Generally, children aren't so attracted to philosophical discourses. Even adults have to push their brains. So it's better if the children have some other activity where they'll be more peaceful, you know, and then we don't have to have competition. So, how can one die in the proper state of mind? Maharaj Bharat, although a great personality, thought of a deer at the end of his life, and so in his next life he was transferred into the body of a deer. Although as a deer he remembered his past activities, he had to accept that animal body. Of course, one's thought during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thought at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. So here comes important instruction here. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. If in one's present life one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one be transferred to the transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendentally absorbed in Krishna's service, then next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life. So, on early Tuesday morning, on December 22nd, which was Safala Akadashi, I believe it was also the winter solstice, when the winter officially go into the winter season, and it's, I think, the shortest day, something like that, shortest daylight hours, depending on where you are in the world. But on that particularly auspicious time, a very great soul departed. It was also, in addition to Safala Akadashi, it was the departure day of Devananda Pandit, and I think there was one other person, Jagadish Pandit, I believe. So, great souls, when they depart, just like the departure of Grandfather Bhishma, he was able to depart at a time of his choosing, time of his choice. I want to get this thing in a little bit. Just like that, make it a little shorter. Okay. So Bhishma was at the time of his departure. He was so self-controlled that even though he was in a situation that to our sense perception was quite horrendous, on a bed of arrows, just suspended like that, but he was in complete and divine consciousness, because by his endeavor and determination to always remember Krishna, Krishna had come to him at his time of death, and he stood there before him. So this is a very exalted personality. But that same opportunity is being offered to all of us on behalf of His Divine Grace, who has given us this transcendental knowledge, so that we too can begin to mold our lives in such a way that we are constantly remembering Krishna. Even if you have to go to the office, or to the school, or to the kitchen, or so many other places. The idea is Kirtanaya Sada Hari. And to prepare for that inevitable time when one will be transferred from this body. So I'm bringing this up specifically because Yamuna Devi Dasi was such a rare soul who actually understood the value of Krishna consciousness and the need to prepare her life for this inevitable moment. Sometimes people think, this talking about death, it's kind of depressing, it's kind of negative. We don't want to think about that. When Prahlad was telling his young friends, my dear friends, please chant. Oh, Prahlad, we're only 5 years old. We want to play. But as we get older, it's the same thing. We want to play in another way. I have to go to the office. I have to mow the lawn. I have to pay, so many things. This is called diversions. So when Jamuna became acquainted with Krishna consciousness in a very profound way, she understood that this lifetime is a lifetime of preparation. For as it explains here, as one is remembering at the time of death what one is remembering, you will attain that type of body. So we know if you remember Krishna, you'll get a spiritual body. But if we're not practicing, if we're not committed to practicing, at the time of death, we may not remember Krishna. We may be thinking of so many other things. I remember when my grandfather died, his last words, he was probably married 60 years by that point, so he tells my grandmother, "Don't worry, the bills are paid." So, because that's what he was doing. He worked hard. He was an honest man. He worked hard. He maintained his family of 5 and, through the Depression and all that. But it's not what we want to remember at the time of death, because, when you go wherever you're going, these bills here are going to have little to do with your reality. So we're practicing now. We're bodybuilding for this next body. And if we do spiritual exercises, we'll get a spiritual body. So Yamuna was a very extraordinary soul, and she took this instruction very seriously. So at the time of her passing, in the Brahma Muhurta hours of December 22nd, Safala Ekadashi, she left her body in a very divine way, just with her hand in her bead bag, and without any disturbance, chanting the holy name, departed. But she had practiced her whole life, and she was immersed always in chanting, whether it was through kirtan or through japa. And nothing made her happier than to engage others in chanting the holy name, because she was convinced that this was really what we are meant to do. When Lord Chaitanya said we should chant continuously, we're thinking, well, how am I going to do that in my sleep? Or how am I going to do that when I'm eating? Or so many things. But when one becomes deeply involved with the holy name, it's like a reel to reel, it's like it's on repeat, and you're going to hear the holy name constantly, even in your sleep. Just like, after the ecstatic Panihati festival and rathayatrу, where there's 2 days of successive kirtans, and you go to sleep at night and you're hearing those kirtans. So if that just, we have that little experience, just imagine when that becomes a constant experience. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the personality that Yamuna was, and try to introduce you a little bit more to her as Yamuna the great devotee, exalted devotee that she was, and Yamuna the person, wonderful personality. So she was one of the most influential devotees during the opening years of ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada arrived here. You all seem to know all this, so what year did he arrive?
1965.
Right. And, did he have a great welcoming? Was there a big crowd there, garlands and, Nobody. Well, when he finally got to New York, there was one person from the Traveler's Aid with a Greyhound bus ticket who took him to Port Authority. And if you've ever been to Port Authority, New York, oh my God, you don't want to go there. Maybe it's better now, but back then it was a place where all the derelicts and the bums and, just nasty place. But that's where the buses were, so that man took him, put him on the bus to Butler, Pennsylvania. How many of you have been to Butler, Pennsylvania? It's a really depressing place. It's just like, a town that had seen better days, even back then, what to speak of now. So, but that was where his sponsor was, so he went there and he made his endeavor. But he could see that if he was going to do something, it wasn't going to happen in Butler, Pennsylvania, so he went back to New York City, and he was just living here and there, until finally some young people realized that they liked chanting with the Swami. He was sitting in the park, Tompkins Square Park, under that famous tree that you can still see, and they were coming and meeting him daily, in the park. But, the weather was changing. It was getting cooler. And then they were thinking, winter's coming. Just like, today was kind of a nice day, but you wouldn't maybe want to sit outside as some of the days get a little cooler. So then, especially in New York when the snow comes. So they wanted to continue this chanting. They wanted to continue meeting with the Swami. So they understood they had to have some facility. And so that little storefront was rented. And then a few people came. They started having regular lessons. So one of the people that was coming happened to be the sister of Yamuna and her boyfriend. And they became quite attached and attracted to the Swami. If any of you have read Miracle on 2nd Avenue? Okay, a few of you. Well, recommended reading. It's really, it's very interesting, it's very enlivening, it's historic, but it's from the perspective of Mukunda Goswami, who was married to Janaki, who is the sister of Jamuna. So, you can get an idea of exactly, what was, some of the little wonderful details of what was going on in that time. So, when it became understood that they were becoming more serious, some of the symptoms of becoming more serious was you gave up some of your bad habits, like, eating unofferable food, or drinking coffee and tea and maybe even other things, or smoking cigarettes, or in those days it was quite in vogue, quite popular to take things like LSD and other mind-altering substances. And for most people, they were doing it because they were actually looking for the truth. And they weren't finding it in their churches, and they weren't finding it in the philosophy books, and they were thinking, well, if this is going to alter the mind, maybe I can find something beyond, so... One time somebody asked Srila Prabhupada, well, Swamiji, have you tried LSD? He goes, no, I haven't, but my students did, and my students did, but they've given it up. So, Jan and Mike, they started following these principles. And then Swamiji advised that boys and girls, if they're going to live together, they should get married. So he agreed to marry them. So then Jan, who had become Janaki through the initiation ceremony, wrote to her sister Joan, who was in the West Coast in Portland, Oregon, and told her that that she was going to get married and she'd like her to come out to the wedding. So I have a little narration about this time here. This was in 1966. So this is taken from transcribed from a little interview with Jamuna. Little did I know what kind of wedding it would be. She didn't, she's in California. We didn't have all the fast connections of communications, and we didn't even have phones so much at those days. We'd actually write on a piece of paper, fold it up, put it in an envelope, stick a stamp on it, and Anyway, so her sister's getting married, she's invited to come, and she's agreed to come. But little did I know what kind of wedding it would be. All I knew was what they had met a Swami, and they had received the names, Mukunda and Janaki, from him. When I saw the Swami, he was sitting beside the window in his front room, bathed in sunlight, surrounded by pots of prasadam, which he was distributing to the devotees who were sitting around him. Mukunda introduced me, and Swamiji offered me some prasadam. Because I was a follower of macrobiotics, which is a very strict diet, it's a minimalist diet, like no sugar, no fruits, no eggplant, can't survive it too, no potatoes. So, and mostly eat brown rice. So we were all kind of like gung-ho on this diet. So now he's offering all this, no dairy. So she goes, I was following. So this prasadam was very unpalatable to me. Yet this radiant and beautiful person was so eager for me to take it. I did take it. But in my mind I decided that this would be the last time I'd have lunch with these people. Then Swamiji put his hand into a big pot with crystallized sugar syrup sticking to the side. He pulled up a huge, round, dripping gulab jamun. Take. He made me take it. When I finished the gulab jamun, I was fully convinced this would definitely be the last time I would ever come here. So that was 1966 in September. So then she was there for 10 days, and following the trip, that visit, then Mukunda, Janaki, and Joan came together back to the West Coast, and they passed through Oregon on their way to San Francisco. The idea was Janaki and Mukunda, they wanted to go to India. So Srila Prabhupada Swamiji suggested, well, maybe before you do that, you could do something to try to introduce other people to this. I hear that in San Francisco, many young people. So he thought, you can read about that in the book, how he kind of thought, yeah, okay, I'll try this, So they were on their way to San Francisco prior to what they thought would be going to India. So they stopped in this little town in it's not in Portland even, it's like in a wilderness area. And in that little town at the base, it's a base town, there's a big, huge mountain that was 10,500 feet, very big mountain. And on the top of that mountain, myself and my boyfriend were living. We were employed by the federal government. There was a big tower on the top, and he would go up every day up to that tower and look out for fires. So they came, and of course very happy to see our good friends. Please come in. Would you like some LSD? No? Because, you want to share the Vedic tradition, you want to share the best thing you have with your friends. So, would you like some LSD? No, thank you. They didn't want anything. Actually, what happened is they got there, we had gone away for the day. Actually, we'd gone away for 2 days. And we'd had a legal day off, 2 days off. We came back, and there was this car there from New York, a little car. So we went into our cabin, and we had lived in a one-room cabin. There was no electricity, no running water. Like, there was a little stream outside, so for taking a shower, you just get out, take a pot of water, and we had a wood stove. And anything else, you just went out into the forest. I mean, we were miles. You can't imagine. There was no living entity except animals, like mountain lions and deer and different kinds of birds and things. Otherwise, people didn't very much come up there. So, you didn't really have to worry. You just go out very naturally into the woods and take your bath and do anything. So, there was a car, like, what is this car from New York doing here? And when we went and looked in our little cabin, there was our friends. And so, we were really happy to see them. And Janaki was already, she'd got the fire going, and she was had made this dough, some kind of dough, and she was making some little balls and rolling them out and then throwing them on our stove, and they were like puffing up. And when you haven't seen something like a chapati before, I mean, it's actually pretty mystical, like how a dough ball that's flattened out can puff up, it's like, so I'm just like kind of watching this thing almost like a trance. And so then we found out, by the way, they had new names, that Jan was now Janaki, Mike was now Mukunda, and they didn't want any drugs. Okay, what's next? Well, they didn't have any meat anymore either, and this whole meal that she was making, there wasn't going to be any dead animals in it, So this was, quite interesting for us, because my boyfriend Sam, at that time point we weren't married, had gone to school with Mike and Joan, now Mukunda. And he was good friends with Joni. He was called Joni then. But they were friends in term, not boyfriend, girlfriend in the mundane sense, but they had like a spiritual connection. And they were always reading books that in those days we thought were spiritual, like the I Ching or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or these kind of books that were kind of otherworldly. And they had, gone searching here and there. And they'd come to the conclusion after reading all these books that they couldn't understand them. If you wanted to understand this stuff, you needed a teacher. So at least, even though the books didn't help them too much in their spiritual life, they came to the right conclusion. You need a teacher. So even when I first met Shyam Sundar, he kept telling me, we have to get a teacher. And I was like, a typical stupid American woman. I don't want a teacher. I don't want anybody telling me what to do with my life. I want to make my own mistakes. So there we were, and then they told us, well, we're on our way to San Francisco. We're going to start a temple. So I asked another brilliant question. I said, what's a temple? And Mukunda very seriously answered, just remember, this is like 1966 at this point. It's a storefront painted white. So, maybe you can go inside the room, and then when the kid is quiet, come outside. Hello? Can you take the crying baby inside the room? Yes. There. Children always have different types of ecstasies that we don't understand. So what happened is we were up on that mountain. We had to stay there. They said, "Do you want to come with us?" We said, "Well, we'd love to come, but we have to stay until it snows, because that was our contract. We're up there to." They figured when it would start to snow, the fire danger would be finished. So we all go to sleep that night, and the next morning I have to respond to the call of nature, so I open the door to go outside, and there was snow on the ground. So not only that, there was mountain lion footprints on the ground too, right in front of our doorway. So I was, wake up, it's snow, we can go. So to communicate with the people down below, the forest ranger station, we had this thing you'd crank up, some kind of a CB radio thing, and hello, this is the forest rangers. And the kind of voices would sound kind of funny, like you're talking with helium or something, but we told them, look, we're going to leave. And they go, no, you can't leave, you have to wait till it snows. We said, well, it snowed. The thing was, we were up so high, it snowed just at the top of the mountain, and they were down below, it hadn't hit down there yet. I said, well, look, our contract says first snow, it snowed, we're leaving. So they agreed, okay, so we packed up everything. Took a couple days, because we had quite a menagerie. We had a couple of horses that I'd borrowed, 2 chickens that I borrowed, 2 dogs, and 2 cats we didn't borrow. So the horses went back, the chickens went back, dogs and cats, they all came to San Francisco. So this was in the end of September, 1st of October, that time frame. So we immediately became very intent to find a place to live and to get onto the business of finding a storefront so we could get this Swami to come, because now we were definitely interested to meet this person. One of the other things they had showed us that evening in the cabin was the first original sets of Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada had brought. And the cover is much the same. You see Lord Vishnu lying on this Ananta Sesh, and then you see all the little, planetaries, the different planets with the different forms of Vishnu. And then you see this lotus flower coming out of the navel with 4-headed Lord Brahma. So, never having seen anything like this before, I asked, what is this? I said, and Mukunda said very seriously, this is God. So then I was actually like immediately accepting this idea, because up until that point I had no idea who God was. If He was, I accepted there was a higher power, something bigger than me. That much I was clued in on. And I also accepted I wasn't this body. But beyond that, what was I and what was this bigger power? I had no idea. Now the hippies like to think, I'm God and you're God. Do you feel like God? If somebody said you're God, would you say that? Would you feel like, well, that's how I felt. I'm not God. If I'm God, I mean, the world's not doing too good, but it's going to even be worse if I'm God. And what to speak of most of the other people I knew. So I really didn't buy into that, I'm God, you're God, we're all God. And then there were the voidists where we could just all merge and become nothing, So those were the prevalent philosophies going around. And to be told, here is God, and have a picture of God, and have a person that looked like a person almost, but not quite, because, the forearms of blue skin, and lying on a snake, floating in the who knows what, it was so much beyond the temporary reality that I was acquainted with that I could accept that here is something beyond my sense perception, and if there is God, then this is definitely God, because He's definitely, not like us. And then when I looked into this beautiful books, I kept seeing this one terminology, Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that made quite an impression, because it was just something we hadn't heard like that. We'd say, okay, God, higher power, the great unknown, but Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that made an impression on me. And at that point, I felt, yes, I wanted to meet this teacher. So, in kind of rapid succession, we were all initiated. Myself and Shamsundar and two others were initiated in the first batch in San Francisco in January of '67. And then Jamuna had met a young man named Roger, and they had gone off for a few weeks. And during that time, Jamuna became very convinced that this is what she wanted to give her life to. So they came back, and then they were initiated, and they were given the name Jamuna and Guru Das. So then Srila Prabhupada also married them, initiated them and married them at the same time. And we still weren't totally clued in on a lot of the customs and cultures and practices, so we had learned about making ghee out of butter. But for her wedding, she couldn't afford butter, so she bought margarine. So when they put that on the fire, it was like kind of sputtering and sputtering, so causing Prabhupada to comment. He goes, well, he said, this marriage will be like the fire, off to a slow start. But he counseled them that they should keep Krishna in the center and assist each other in their spiritual lives. So then Jamuna was remembering, when he went on his daily morning walk, anyone could go with him. So I was walking one morning, and I asked him, Swamiji, do you think sometime you would allow us to go to Vrindavan with you? And he turned around and he said, yes, I will take you to Vrindavan one day, and I will show you Vrindavan on foot. I thought that was the most wonderful thing I'd ever heard in my life, and I was just waiting for that day to come. So by the time Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, as we were still calling him, left San Francisco in April, Jamuna had been introduced to traditional Vaishnava cooking, chanting, prasadam distribution, deity worship, because by then Lord Jagannath had arrived and been carved, and this was in April. Then a couple months, April up until July. So in July we had first rathayatrau. But in all of these activities, Jamuna was an exceptionally sincere student, and she took up every one of these activities with a very exemplary devotional attitude, with great care, with great attention, and great love. So in May of that same year, 67, Gurudas and Jamuna received their first letter from Swamiji from New York, and he writes, "I have a very good appreciation for both of you, Gurudas and Yamuna. You are two good souls. Now you have combined. Live peacefully, chant Hare Krishna, and be happy in your life." But the next month, what happened, in June, Srila Prabhupada had suffered a stroke. And we didn't know what would the outcome of that would be. So at that point he allowed us to make a prayer to Krishna. It was a very simple prayer. "My dear Lord, my spiritual master has not yet completed his work. Please protect him." So in our little storefront temple, we held our first, it wasn't quite a 24-hour kirtan, we had a 12-hour kirtan in front of Lord Jagannath. And it was a most amazing kirtan. Anyone who entered the temple on that particular day was affected by that kirtan, because we were crying from the depths of our heart to Lord Krishna. And he was in front of us in his Lord Jagannath feature. And at that point we hadn't sewed for him, so he was just standing, as you will sometimes, like if you buy a deity of Lord Jagannath, he's nicely painted and that's it. So that's how he was. But during that particular kirtan, that first long kirtan, it was really seen by practically everybody, even non-devotees, that Lord Jagannath had come alive. And in particular, I remember Janaki was crying, and I looked at her. I thought, why are you crying? Like maybe she got some news and I haven't heard the news, And I looked at her and she goes, "He's there, he's really there." And he was pointing to Lord Jagannath, and other people were just looking. And somehow or other we felt he was really hearing our prayers and he was reciprocating. And indeed it must be so, because Srila Prabhupada, we got the news then shortly thereafter that he had recovered sufficiently. So then he went back to India to fully recover, and then he came back in September, and he brought little gifts for his students. He brought all the ladies. We got a sari that he brought from, like in Bengali, from Bengal. Remember, mine was white with a embroidered border that was red and blue with a little gold, not jari gold, but yellow gold thread. In Mukunda's book, he has it wrong. He says, "I got a blue sari," but it actually was white with red and green, like, men don't look at the colors of sari. I bet if I asked any guy here, what color of sari is your wife wearing, you would just I don't know. So he says it's blue, but anyway, maybe it's... Anyways, he gave some cloth also to Jamuna, and he said he gave 2 saris. He goes, "This is to make a dress for Lord Jagannath." So we were kind of startled. We thought he was dressed, that paint was his dress, But he drew a little picture, and Jamuna and Harsharani together, they made the first outfit for Lord Jagannath. It was and on the rathayatrу in that year, they debuted. There was a hand-pulled cart. The first rathayatrу was on the back of a truck, but this was the first hand-pulled cart, and they were wearing their first outfit, with beautiful turbans, and Jagannath had peacock feather. So then the next adventure was that it had been decided we'd all go. It was the same crew that had come down to start the San-Francisco temple, that we were going to go to London. It was actually Shyam Sundar had this idea that, if we want to spread Krishna consciousness, we need to get somebody famous to chant, because, whatever the famous person does, then other people, they want to do the same thing, right? So the most famous people at that point in time were the Beatles. So he thought, and they had some spiritual interests, so if we get those Beatles to chant Hare Krishna, the whole world will chant Hare Krishna. That was his rationale. Remember, Srila Prabhupada called Mukunda and he goes, so what do you think, Mukunda? Because Shamsundar, he tended to have very, big ideas. So Prabhupada asked Shamsundar, what do you think, Mukunda, what do you think about Shamsundar's idea to meet these beetles? Like, Prabhupada didn't even know it. To meet these beetles, Shamsundar said, Mukunda said, well, it just might work. So then immediate Prabhupada was like right behind it, So then Gurudas and Jamuna, they also wanted to join. And so in the end there was the 7 of us, 6 adults and a little baby that was 6 weeks old. So following the second rathayatrā, we took off, and it was a little exciting because in those days they were not so anxious to have more hippies in London. So they were, if you were going to come in, you had to show that you were wealthy enough to be a guest in their country. And we had no money. At this point, I will not tell you how we actually, for myself and Shamsundar, how we got the money to go. It was, Krishna made the arrangement, but it was pretty hip at the times how we got that money. So we all had tickets, but when you entered, you had to show some ability to, maintain yourself. So Prabhupada loaned us $1,500 from the BBT, just starting BBT. We had flown to Montreal to take darshan. He was there in Montreal waiting to get a permanent visa for America. So it was also, the next day was Janmashtami, and the day after, of course, was Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja Day. So we observed those ceremonies in 1968 with Srila Prabhupada in Montreal before departing. And on the few days we were there, he was giving very detailed instructions on, how we should perform Harinam Sankirtan, because we didn't have books and, any propaganda to give out. So the really only thing we had to offer was really the holy name. So this was very deeply etched in our, in our consciousness. Harinam had been going on in does anybody know what that, Thank you very much, because my hearing aids were freaking out. In San-Francisco, the first Western street, in Pumpkin Square Park they did the Harinam, that was out public, but they actually took a chanting party walking through the streets. Tamal Krishna Vishnu Janan and Jamuna was on that first party, the first day. And so then we gradually developed a taste for going out and chanting in the public. So we knew that that was going to be our key activity in London. And we got over there. We stopped in Amsterdam, and then one by one we came over, taking a ferry boat across. So myself and Shamsundar, we came first, we passed through, we showed the money, and then we wired that same money back. The next couple came through, showed the same money, wired it back, like that, then we all got in. Then we sent it back to Srila Prabhupada and it got lost somewhere. So Shamsundar is total anxiety, and Srila Prabhupada wrote him a letter. He said, don't worry, Krishna will take care. He says, it's not your fault. He says, it's a bank. It was a 5th class bank. They had made some mistake. Eventually it was recovered. Anyways, we were there with little money. We had to, most of the time, live in different parts of town. Sometimes it just we'd go out just like we're here tonight, meeting in somebody's house. 7 nights a week we'd go somewhere, to somebody's house, to a Hindu center, to a some kind of a hippie place, to the arts lab, there was a theater going, the play, the drama, it was called Hair. And in that movie, it wasn't a movie, it became a movie, but at that point it was on stage. They chanted Hare Krishna as part of the act. So we'd go stand outside that theater. So when the people came out of their theater, we'd be there, the real Hare Krishnas, chanting Hare Krishna. I mean, we did anything, anywhere. We would just like go. Our little group of 6, and then some people started coming, but we were still living all over the place. So Jamuna mentions, I had to move to a Jamaican ghetto, the top floor of one of the buildings. It was really awful. Day after day after day, I would sit and listen to a tape of Swamiji singing. It was a beautiful tape he had just made in Los Angeles, and I'd pray to him, please come, please come. So Swamiji wrote to Jamuna, your appreciation, because she wrote and let him know how much she appreciated this beautiful tape. Your appreciation is so nice. Of course, Srimad Bhagavad Gita and teachings of Lord Chaitanya is so nice, of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So in the meantime, these books had come out, but we could barely get one copy for all of us, what to speak of distribution. So, but he's appreciating her appreciation. So please continue to study and learn and preach in this way to everyone you meet. I am very happy to learn that you're going to various homes and lecture halls and holding kirtans and delivering lectures from these transcendental literatures. This is very nice. And if you continue in this way, gradually so many people will be attracted that our London center will soon be successful. Now, we didn't have a place at that time, but he said it doesn't matter, it will be successful. So these type of letters really encouraged us. So then after many failed attempts, in the middle of the winter struggle, somehow Shamsundar met George Harrison, and he was searching for spirituality, and he had invited us to dinner at his home, and at that dinner we did a very long sustained kirtan that was very blissful, and then afterwards he said, we should make a record. So that was kind of the beginning. So on the day of the recording, we all went to this, it's a very professional recording studio on Abbey Road. It was very well known. And Jamuna came in and she put tilak on all of the technicians, of course we had tilak on. So Paul McCartney was there with his wife Linda. They were operating the control panel, and George was playing the organ, and Kunda was on the mridanga, and Yamuna was just really deeply praying to Srila Prabhupada for the strength to properly execute this. It was a bit of a challenge because there was a time frame, and we had to do the perfect kirtan in 2 1/4 minutes. So we spent the whole day just doing take after kirtan, 2 minute and quarter kirtan, one after over and over and over and over. There would be something a little wrong, or finally it was like at the end of the day, and it was just it was blissful. I mean, it was kirtan, so it wasn't like this was not blissful. But it was the end of the day, and I remember we just gave one more take. And at the end of that take, I picked up this wooden mallet, and I hit this. There was a big, huge gong there. I banged that gong, and it made a big noise that you can hear on the end of the kirtan. But at the moment it happened, everybody just looked at me like, what have you done? Because it wasn't rehearsed, I just kind of done it, But fortunately, the next day when George came in, he goes, this is going to be big. Listen, and he plays the track, and at the end there's the gong. So suddenly everybody was a little happy. But Shamsundar and Jamuna, they were singing the lead vocals there. And George was really impressed with Jamuna. And one time he told her, he said, Jamuna, if you want, I can make you famous. I can make you, because, when you're a famous person, you have attention. So if you push somebody forward, that person will get, automatic attention. So she was thinking, well, if I become famous, I might be able to even do more than I'm doing now, but then I might become more attracted to Maya, or I might get distracted. So she said to George, I want to think about it, and then I'll let you know. So she really thought about it. She really prayed about this. And in the end she said, thank you very much, but no thank you, I'm going to stay with Swami and just... It's not that she would have left if she'd done that, but she could just see that world, because we'd had enough exposure even, to see that it would be very hard to practice Krishna consciousness in that atmosphere. So then eventually we finally were living all together, and that was at John Lennon's place. And that was outside of London in a place called Ascot. And Srila Prabhupada would sometimes sit in his room and just solitary bhajan chanting with his harmonium. And Yamuna would sit outside quietly on the stairs. And one morning he called her. He said, come in, come in. And he goes, what are you doing? He's asking her. And she goes, I'm listening, Swamiji. Your singing is so beautiful. So he said, do you want to come in and listen? And of course, she wanted to come in and listen. So she said, yes, very much. So he said, you can play the drum and I'll play harmonium and Purushottam can play kartals. So now not only is she going to be listening, she's like part of it. And for several mornings, Yamuna recorded Srila Prabhupada singing prayer by Srila Narottam Das Thakur, which was Hari Hari Bifale. And Prabhupada explained to her that the meaning was, oh Lord Hari, I have wasted my life. Although I have taken a rare human birth, like a miser I have not served Radha and Krishna, and thus I knowingly drank poison. So then Prabhupada asked her, Yamuna, what is your favorite prayer? She says, I like Shastastika prayers. That is very nice. And then she asked, Swamiji, what is your favorite prayer? And he said, this song, Hari Hari Bifale. So anyway, finally we able to get a building, very place was established, and we had a center now in London. So Yamuna remembers that this was a real growth period in London, just as there was a burgeoning of youth interested in spiritual life and breaking out of the mold of the 50s and 60s. This happened in London at the same time. We attracted people mostly through the holy name. Srila Prabhupada's arrival in 1969 was the catalyst. We were the seeds being planted, and he was the blossoming creeper of Lord Chaitanya's love. And when he came, everything ignited with the thunder and veracity and speed of a firestorm. And it's true, we'd been there for months and months and months, just trying and trying to do something. And, a couple people, we had a handful of little devotees when he came. But once Prabhupada came, my God, it was like, we went from lukewarm to blazing hot. It was completely ecstatic. So just, from the San Francisco days, Srila Prabhupada had encouraged Yamuna to, because she has a propensity, she's an excellent teacher. She was herself an excellent student, she was an excellent teacher. I was talking with her sister, and she was saying that in her young days, she was reminding me how she had studied ballet. And ballet is, you have to be very disciplined. So she understood from a young age that if you want to accomplish something, there has to be discipline, and perseverance. So that kind of, mindset was already there for her that made it, the transition into spiritual life easier and more effective. So Srila Prabhupada, encouraged her. He says, I'm glad to learn you are training at that point we had 2 boys in London, and she was the main one training him. So he said, I'm glad to learn you're training the 2 boys in Krishna consciousness. You're a very nice girl, and I have full faith in you, and I wish that you develop this line of service to the society. She would train him, and I would shave him. That was my service. So, He personally taught Jamuna deity worship, and he was really pleased with her service. He said, regarding our London mutt at Sevenbury Place, it was very successfully opened, and the Seva Puja operations are going on very, very nicely under the care of Shrimati Yamuna Devi Dasi. And based upon her recommendations, Prabhupada accepted new disciples. He said in a letter, I have received their respective letters, Monique, Evelyn, and Jolie, and the recommendation of initiation from Jamuna Devi, and I am sending their beads, duly chanted upon by separate mail. And then in another letter, he acknowledged Jamuna's preaching. He said, I am glad to learn that you have defeated the 4 whips of the Ramakrishna mission by giving quotations from the Bhagavad Gita. And he wrote, if you carry on your service to Radha and Krishna according to the prescribed rules, your love of Krishna will increase more and more. This you are seeing practically by the grace of Krishna. So we can see, as expressed in Bhagavad Gita, it's an ongoing process. We don't just at the last minute suddenly think we're going to remember Krishna, but we have to begin this process immediately when you come into contact. I had written to Prabhupada one letter during this time, because I was there with a little baby. It was a little difficult. And I was thinking, wow, so I wrote to, I said, Swamiji, when you were a Grihastha, did you find it difficult to practice Krishna consciousness? I was still not so developed in my understanding of maybe what is a proper question. But he answered me, he said, yes, it was difficult. But he explained it was difficult because his family wasn't inclined. So he said, for you, you should very diligently and sincerely chant 16 rounds above. And he said other regulations, meaning, like little things, not the 4 rules and regulations, but other little regulations may or may not be, perfectly executed. But this 16 rounds. So that was a personal instruction that he gave to me in my inquiry as a Grihastha, how to execute Krishna consciousness, and he emphasized the chanting of the 16 rounds. And that was during a time when I had a small child. We were living from one place to the next, literally. This was before the temple was established. So I could understand from that instruction the importance of the 16 rounds as a preparation and, the beginning and the end. That, we chant in the beginning, and that will ensure that we can chant at the end. So then we all went, as he mentioned, to India. We got a letter in 1970, a little aerogram came, and there was a list of names of devotees he was inviting to come to India and begin the World Sankirtan Party. So myself, my husband was there, and Jamuna and Mukunda's name, not Mukunda, Mukunda and Gurudas's names were there. And at the end of the letter he put, and baby Saraswati. So then we flew in a very ancient plane that wasn't even a jet. And we flew to Bombay at that time, and entered. And the first day we were given our first instruction by Srila Prabhupada, who joined us later on in the day. He sent us out on the street, and we performed Harinam Sankirtan through the streets of Bombay. And the people were just astounded, because at that point, tourism hadn't developed. The airport was just this corrugated metal building, like half dome building. It was just, I think the inside was not even, I'm not sure. The runway was cement, but inside that building, I'm not even sure it was, cement, or it might have been dirt floor. But, so Westerners were not so noticeable. So we were chanting out on the street. People would come up and they'd go like this and look at their finger. Because they couldn't imagine, who are these white people? We were dressed like this with the tilak, they'd come up and look. So, And in India, we were again going out. We weren't. You might think, oh, you're in India now. You go to Vrindavan. But we didn't do that. We didn't do anything except when we were invited to go somewhere to perform Sankirtan or to have a program to spread Krishna consciousness. That was our only business there. And then sometimes we would be going to one place or the other, and like the devotees were coming back from Gorakhpur to Delhi, and some man came and met the train, and they were on their way to Bombay, but they stopped in Delhi. This man came to meet the train, and he said, this person here, he's very big, he's interested in what you're doing, he wants to help, he wanted Prabhupada to get off the train, but Prabhupada had an engagement in Bombay, so he said to Jamuna and Gurudasa, you get down here and see what you can do. And then he sent 4 brahmacharis with them. It's just like that. It was just this one person who we didn't really know, who knew another person who said he was interested. But, without thinking twice, yes, Swamiji. And so she got off the train with, in those days we just have one little bag, she couldn't carry it with you then, so we traveled lightly. And she made her obeisances to the car where Srila Prabhupada was, and the train took off, and there they were in Delhi. And so somehow or other, though, really they were able to meet many Indian leaders. They met Indira Gandhi, for example. And Prabhupada wrote, I'm so glad to know you're seeing all the MPs and officials in the government service, and if you can make each one of them a member of our society, it will be a great service. Try to do it to your best capacity. I'm also very much pleased that Prime Minister Indira Gandhi is now personally well known to you. For your presence only, she has given special order for our devotees to stay in Delhi, and certainly this is a good achievement. We were having trouble, extending our visas, so she was able to help us. Later, Gurudasa and Jamuna agreed to remain in Vrindavan to help build a temple there, and Prabhupada wrote, if you can construct a nice temple in Vrindavan for me in this way, I shall be eternally grateful. Because you are sincere devotees of Krishna, he is giving you all strength and intelligence how to do it. So, of course, that temple was Krishna Balaram temple. And they were the ones that saw the early foundation completed and got the building started up. But not only that, in this beautiful darshan you take every day of when you're there, as Shri Shri Radhasham Sundar, Krishna Balaram, and Shri Shri Gaurnitai. It was Jamuna who oversaw the carving of these murtis. She went around to all the temples in Vrindavan and took pictures where she could, and she even took pictures where she couldn't. And then she'd study the murtis, and then she'd study the pictures, and then get an idea. And then she went to Jaipur and, showing the picture, showing her idea how Krishna should be standing, how his face should be, how Radharani's face should be, how her hands should be, every little detail, how the feet should be placed. And in this way she oversaw the carving of these deities that are worshipped around the world, because of course now they have the video broadcast at any time. I'm sure right now if you went online we could take their darshan. So that was Jamuna. She did that. And then the Chota Utsava Murtis, she also saw to that. Small Gaurnitai, small Krishna Balaram, and the small Radhesham, Lalita Vishaka. Now, when the small ones of the brass deities for these small forms of Radha and Krishna was Radharani was made of Astadatta, which is like 8 metals, and then in this way they were like really shiny and very beautiful. And she kind of used a model of Radharaman to get that very curvy body for Krishna. And she had Radharani, her head is slightly although she's facing straight, her head was slightly turned towards the deity. And she had another set made. So the one set, of course, is in Vrindavan, but the other set became Radha Banabihari, which were her own deities, and they were worshipped. On the day that I spent with her, which was a week ago, not this last, on Bhakti Siddhanta's disappearance date, December 14th, I spent the day with her. And it was the same celebration day for 37 years of worship for her deities. And extraordinarily meticulous worship. There's other folders there, I don't know if we can get to them, that have the pictures of her deities on them. I don't know, because we're having the same folder, I don't know if we can find it or not. One, in the letter that Prabhupada wrote to them at this point, very instructive letter, to Guru Das and Jamuna, I am confident I have entrusted this project, which is one of the most important of our ISKCON, to the right persons, namely yourself, your good wife Jamuna Devi, and Kurudakshayi Vishnu Prabhu. So far as your question regarding women, I have always accepted the service of women without any discrimination. And this was really the fact. Srila Prabhupada did not put a barrier between service of the men and the women. And he taught all of us to address each other, men and women, as Prabhu. Nowadays in ISKCON, Prabhu is like a synonym for men. But that is like unfortunate. Prabhupada taught us all, and he called us Joan Prabhu, Jamuna Prabhu. You can see it in letters that are transcribed. And because he taught us, if you call each other Prabhu, because Prabhu means master, not that you become master, but you become servant. So in this way he wanted us to develop the proper service attitude and the proper mood of respect towards one another. So somehow down the line the Hinduization of ISKCON happened and Prabhu has morphed into becoming man. But if you want to study Srila Prabhupada's teachings, you will see, even in Bhagavatam and purport in the 6th canto, he's not saying the men should call each other Prabhu, he's saying all of you call each other Prabhu. Because this will help you develop the correct consciousness. Not that you become servant, but that you become, not that you become master, but that you become servant. So, then in 1975, Guru Das took sannyas, and at his ceremony, Srila Prabhupada said, now he is Guru Das Swami. I got him married. His wife is also a great devotee, Jamuna. So now Jamuna has taken a very nice path. She has also become sannyasin. Although there is no sannyasini for women, she has voluntarily taken these vows. She is doing very nice. Therefore, I advise the husband, you also take sannyas. So, he named her deities, Sri Sri Radha Banabihari, and he instructed Jamuna and her friend Dinatarani, you can attract the fair sex community. If you can organize all these girls, they will get a transcendental engagement and may not be allured to the frustration of life. Your engagement should be chanting and worship of the deity. It is better you don't make a large program. Remain a humble program. So this was January of 76, and Jamuna reported to him, we have taken your instruction very seriously, living a pure, simple life in the full fire of Krishna consciousness. We think this is most beneficial and are factually tasting the results of this simple life. So, this is the point, is if you actually start to deeply practice Krishna consciousness, results come. And the results are you become less infatuated with material life and you become more attracted to performing spiritual activities. So, I wanted to share a couple, it's getting a little late, isn't it? I wanted to share some memories of some devotees to give you an idea how Jamuna's influence. In particular, her later years, she was very concerned about the young people, that they would also want to be attracted to Krishna consciousness. And this is a little, a short paragraph from one of those young people, who is actually the daughter of Vishaka. Her name is... My husband and I spent most of the year 2010 in Sharanagati, Canada. A large part of why we were inspired to do that, because, Sharanagati is talk about off the grid. It's off the grid. So it's, if you want modern conveniences, don't go to Sharanagati. A large part of why we were inspired to do that was to take advantage of the incredible devotional Sangha that Yamuna and Dinatarani Prabhus facilitated. Every morning they held a full morning program in their house, which was open to the community. They simply loved to share Krishna consciousness with everyone, especially the young devotees. Yamuna Prabhu held cooking classes for the youth, deity sewing classes, deity worship classes, and more. She showered her love and affection on us and shared her deep love for devotional service. Every summer, she and Dinatarani Prabhu held an evening of Bhakti Vinod Thakur bhajans at their house. They actually did it for a month, every night for a month. Those bhajans were from another realm. The profoundly devotional and meditative mood of those melodious bhajans were incredible, indescribable. The Sharanagati youth especially were addicted to these bhajans. Everything Jamuna did was first class. She was an ocean of devotion, an ocean of inspiration for people that knew her and whoever simply heard of her. Because it's getting so late, I didn't realize how late it was getting. The tributes rightly discuss one after the other her deep attention to detail and her overwhelming love for kirtan and for chanting, and her overwhelming ability to infuse that same interest and desire for chanting to others. She just loved to share Krishna consciousness. And she gave it in such a way that people would gladly accept it. She never you should do this or that. She could do that if she got to know you. But her general mood was just come and take it. Just like Lord Chaitanya, come and take it. So this wonderful personality who has departed, she had also a wonderful sense of humor, and when she laughed, the whole floor would shake. Her sister said, she mentioned that what was also glorious was her sense of humor. We'd go into fits of laughter so that the tears would be running down our legs, not just our eyes. I believe her laughter has moved into an eternal state of celestial joy. No doubt she travels with her spices and her knives and her pots, all of her cooking equipment, and now she's up there cooking for Srimati Radharani. Giriraj Swami, I'll read just a short part of his. To understand Jamuna means to understand more about Srila Prabhupada. By his and her, of his mission and his Lord's. She was a mentor, a guide, and a friend to many of us, including myself. In her passing, our appreciation for and understanding of her may increase, just as people's appreciation for and understanding of Srila Prabhupada is increasing. I feel it will be part of our purification individually and collectively to serve her in separation in service to Srila Prabhupada, by tactfully and tastefully making her association and mercy available to others in tangible and sustainable ways, such as books or media, Like I was playing that one. Toward the end, she actually didn't even want to lead kirtans. She just wanted to be there and chanting. So, for many years, because she felt it was a distraction. People would be distracted by her voice, and, they would get into a musical mood. And Prabhupada instructed us from the very beginning, kirtan is not about music, So she was very in tune with that, and she knew it was about hearing. You hear hearing and chanting. So kirtan, hearing, deeply hearing. And so she didn't want to get distracted from that meditative mood, and she didn't want to distract others. One godbrother wrote her rendition of the Govindam prayers. So these beautiful prayers that you hear every morning, which, my file had prepped it, so I was going to try to play it, but there's, can you go back one, and then, yeah. So this is Sri Sri Radhavani Bihari, her beautiful deities. There was one with flowers. Well, anyway, that was beautiful. It's all beautiful. So when we made this record, this Govindam prayer, at the time there was big competition in ISKCON over book distribution, but we didn't have books to distribute, and our records were like going #1, so a lot of records were being sold. But yeah, press that one, that is beautiful. And so the other temples were sending book scores, but we sent a record, and a record score to Srila Prabhupada. And the devotees, we didn't find this out until a little later, they hid the record. They thought, what is this? They ran off, Shamsundar, Mukunda, Gurudas, Jamuna, they ran away to England and met the Beatles and fell into Maya. So then one day, but they gave the score, and then so Prabhupada was reading all the book scores, and he was happy, calm, and then he got, just see, they have what they have done, and he was reading our scores about the records being sold also. Very pleased, because that meant those people were hearing what? Hare Krishna. So he found out about the record. He says, I want to hear it. And they were like, he wants to hear this record. And they go, well, we don't have anything to play it. Well, they had some kind of a sound system in the temple, so he said, play it in the temple. And the devotees were like, he wants to play this in the temple. They have modern instruments and So, but Prabhupada said, so they put it on. It just happened at the time, talk about Krishna's divine intervention, just the time when they played it, the curtains opened up. Govindam. Prabhupada was there, tears coming down his face. And he instructed that this should be played for every temple for greeting the deities. So... So that's the kind of Maya. You can get in that kind of Maya, it's good Maya. So you'd think that would be a clear thing, but after some time, some little hotshot brahmacharis wrote a letter to Prabhupada. It says, Swamiji, Prabhupada, it says, we shouldn't listen to women singing, so we're thinking that it would be better if we listened to you singing the Govindam prayer, so do you mind if we don't play this one anymore with a woman's voice singing, and we play your record? They actually wrote this letter to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada sent back this beautiful letter. So you think you have discovered something new? We have been listening all over the world. We are listening, we are hearing, and now you have discovered something new? He said, this is a concert. There are many voices. There are many musical instruments. It is a concert. It is good enough here. He was in India. Then I think it is good enough there. So there are little cowpens between their legs. They retreated. But this is about the same topic. Yamuna's transcendental rendering of the Govindam prayers continues as a firmly established ISKCON tradition, and it has been heard by millions, literally, of people over the last 40 years. So last December, the person who wrote this, I attended a conference on cosmology at one of the premier science campuses in Bangalore. The organizer of the conference was Mr. D.N. Acharya, and he was an elderly, white-haired Sri Vaishnava from Srirangam. And when he saw this person, he realized, here's an ISKCON person. And he found out that he was also a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. So he began to glorify Srila Prabhupada. And then he said, I love those Govindam prayers. And he started singing exactly Yamuna's tune. And he said, I love it. He says, but I'm very sad because he wore out his copy. He had played it so much. So he said, can you please help me get another recording? So even senior members of other Vaishnava Sampradayas were, inspired and appreciating the transcendental ability of Jamuna to glorify Lord Krishna through her voice. Then a little brief, this is from Trivikram Maharaj. I don't know if you know him. He's a very elderly sannyasi. There was an exchange, I remember, between Srila Prabhupada and Yamuna that impressed me. We were living at John Lennon's estate in the fall of '69, and Yamuna had been sick and hadn't seen Prabhupada in a few days. We were with Srila Prabhupada when she saw him from across the way, and she spontaneously called out, "Srila Prabhupada, I love you so much." We were a little shocked by this, because, it's like he's across, it wasn't just in the city, it was like outside, and she just called out very loudly. So, and he turned around and he said, "I know." They had such a wonderful relationship. Are you all familiar with the cookbook, Lord Krishna's Cuisine? So this is like the Srimad Bhagavatam of cookbooks, isn't it? It's like just like the Bhagavatam is the cream of Vedic literature. This cookbook is the cream of the cream, and it is such an amazing journey to read. Just to read that, even if you have no intention of cooking, you can read that book and become spiritually enlivened. I just want to read this one because this is about that achievement. And there were many this was a 10-year heroic effort. But in 1986, this is from Rameshwar Prabhu, and at the time he was head of the BBT in Los Angeles. Jamuna approached me about having the BBT fund the expenses for her to write the ultimate cookbook. I was very excited and immediately I agreed. So that year she came to stay in New Dwarka to launch the project. She was working with 3 of our god sisters, Vishaka Devi, Palika Devi, and Tusti Devi. In sponsoring their work, we set up a nice apartment, and every day she would prepare a different recipe, working on it till she deemed it perfect. Jamuna made perfection seem imperfect. She was beyond perfection. So if you actually really follow the recipe as she puts it in the book, your preparation will come out perfectly. And this was because she would just go over and over and over and cook until it was perfect. And she would write it down each time because, most people, when you cook, you're throwing things in the pot, and people say, "Wow, that's so good, what did you do?" I don't know, I just threw stuff in the pot. So she was a living example of being a perfectionist for Krishna. So, as she was doing these trials, she decided there has to be someone to taste it, outside the little group. So she offered that service to Rameshwar Prabhu. So then by Krishna's mercy, she, every day, every afternoon at lunchtime, these amazing ladies would come to my quarters with a dazzling plate of prasadam, artfully arranged so that the visually astonishing presentation, the extraordinary aromas, the coloring, the texture, the scientific combining of flavors and spices, and the heavenly taste transported me every single day outside the earthly plane of existence. Prasadam is extraordinary. There's actually a book that I hope someday gets published. It's an underground book that's been in New Vrindavan secretly since the 70s, but it's about the glories of Prasadam. And one day it's got to get out of New Vrindavan because it's really, it glorifies Prasadam in such a way that you can never see it as just food. People call Prasadam food. They have not understood. So, he's appreciated. Jamuna would delight in explaining all the steps in the process, the art of devotional cooking. She described how she organized her kitchen. Like if you go in her kitchen, first of all, you would never ever see anything out of place. Even when she was cooking, everything would be so neat and organized, you couldn't even, you were like, what is she doing? Is she doing anything? And she'd have the pots hung up, we throw all our pots bang bang together so they all get dented up, Her pots, because she had been taught by Srila Prabhupada, she was already clean, he taught us how to be cleaner. So one of the things when you cook for Prabhupada is you couldn't even have a little fleck of black even on the outside of the pot. So she held that same standard in her kitchen, and she had on the walls the big pots down to the smaller pots, almost like a musical symphony of pots, and everything, so spotless you could see your face in the pot. I mean, this is Jamuna. Everything had a place and perfectly belonged exactly where she wanted them to be, so that she could just reach out and, when she was in the kitchen, it was like she was dancing, moving around and just getting all these things. And if everything was right where it was, you could do that. She couldn't imagine her offering would be accepted by Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna if there was even the slightest deviation from this standard. And her kitchen was always saturated with the divine chanting of Srila Prabhupada, a tape of Prabhupada playing throughout constantly. So this standard of pure goodness and pure cleanliness surpassed anything I had previously experienced, even in any temple kitchen or temple altar. She aspired to be a living example of purity, and she taught cooking by pouring attentive love in her every motion, her every touch of the foodstuff, and the paraphernalia she used for her offering. This amazing Leela went on for months until Jamuna decided she needed to be in a completely pastoral, rustic environment which would enable her to be even more absorbed in the mood of Vrindavan she was trying to attain. And we all agreed that she could relocate to a farm so she could complete her masterpiece, Lord Krishna's cuisine, the art of Indian vegetarian cooking. So, as devotees, we all have had ecstatic, almost mystical experiences while honoring prasadam. Words fail me as I try to describe this experience. For myself, all I can say is that the memory of the taste of the prasadam that Yamuna Devi lovingly prepared and offered during those months in '86 remains with me every day as my life, as fresh as if it were just this very afternoon. Now this kind of sums up, there was a very nice memorial celebration in Alatra the other day, and so many people were remembering and glorifying her cooking, but the theme was always there, her meticulous, the incredible aromas, the way she would personally serve each person after the cooking, and how the kitchen was always clean, even in the midst of cooking. Oh. Just a short one here. Yamuna recounted, this is Kalakanta. Yamuna recounted the old days when a family atmosphere pervaded the temples and everyone was addressed as Prabhu. She did not care for the later stuffy formalities that evolved in ISKCON. Mother Yamuna, I said once. Yes, Father Kalakanta, she sweetly replied. Anyway, this was a small thing I wrote the other day. It was Thursday morning, December 22nd, 2011, when a small group of friends and associates of Her Grace Yamuna Devi Dasi gathered together to offer last respects before placing her mortal remains into fire. Devotees from Malati had gathered together charnarit water, mahatulsi leaves, manjaris, garlands, chandan, and other sacred items. Shruti Rupa had taken the lead in securing a funeral home that was amicable to our simple request that we prepare the body for its brief but final journey into the furnace, as well as being there to assist Dina Tarni, who was suddenly bereft of her dearmost associate and intimate friend in devotional service. On Thursday morning, Dinatarni, Shuta Rupa Nirmala, and her husband Devarshi and her sister Rangavati were present, along with Malati Kartamashi, who is affectionately called Kar, his wife Radha, and their small son Ganesham and Hari Bhakta Das. 10 breaking hearts who couldn't imagine being anywhere else at that moment, yet wished that they were not really there for the purpose at hand. In addition to the physical attendees, Janaki Devi, who is both Yamuna's biological sister and God's sister, was present along with her companion Barb via my iPhone. I'd called in, and so they were able to hear. Shruti, Malati, and Nirmala arrived first, offering prostrated obeisances to Yamuna's memory and her body, which was now atop a slim gurney on wheels, covered at first by white sheets and a blanket from the funeral home. We were going to prepare her body for the cremation. It was surreal and painfully blissful to do this service. Holy Charnamrita water was sprinkled as a final shower. Her trademark beige outfit was put on her now cast-aside form. Then the marks of tilak and other sacred names were applied. I was privileged to apply the final tilak to her gracefully beautiful forehead, almost expecting her to wake up from her so-called slumber and explain, "What in the world are you doing?" But of course this did not happen. Neck beads were put on, and the sacred oil of Nrsimhadev from Mayapur was applied. Maha flower garlands, big and small, were draped atop her form, including one around her left ear. A pavitra from Mayapur was put around her head. Each of us was fully immersed in this final personal service. A Harinam chadar from Alacha was placed around the profile of her head, and pieces of cloth that matched the color of her outfit were placed on top her form, shroud-like. Rangavati had made a giant giwik. This was really a big giwik that was placed atop of the belly. And the others were then called for a simple duparti and circumambulation, accompanied by kirtan. Red rose petals were offered, and a gigantic pink hibiscus was placed by Radha, who probably picked it from a local shrub. Then the funeral home men arrived to help to prepare to transport the body from our little space in the corner of a larger room to the actual furnace. The sides of the cardboard container were pulled up, and a royal blue plush blanket with fitted corners was placed over the body. So I couldn't understand why they were putting this, blanket over. At first I was wondering why they were doing that. But then suddenly, they opened this door, because we were going to go from there to the furnace. But we opened the door, and suddenly we were right outside in broad daylight, and it was like we were walking across this courtyard. But then there was cars going by, people walking by, so that I could understand the blanket. But then we went into this. It was like a 3-sided place, and then from that a carport. But then off of that was the actual room where this big furnace pit was. So, as this gigantic giwik was set alight by Rangavati, we all offered our last. We had roses. We offered roses, and we were pushing her blissful body into the furnace pit to just catch, a last glimpse before the doors closed. And Nirmala was chanting Bhagavad Gita. I was chanting Sri Sapanishad. And then Shruti Rupa stepped forward, and there's these buttons. So she pressed the on button, and then there was this huge noise like a bulldozer. When the fire began to heat up, the furnace starts to heat up. And it takes about 1,200 to 1,800 degrees of fire to, create the body. And usually they told us it takes 4 hours, but she had a bigger body, so it would take a longer time to do that. And we were just standing there chanting, kind of a sad kirtan. But after some time, with Kar leading, and he was leading the old tunes, Srila Prabhupada tunes that Jamuna and all of us loved, and Hari Bhakti was playing gently on the mridanga. Then after some time, our feet started moving, and our hands were kind of clapping and raising up, and then crying, Gauranga, Gora, Gauranga, Gora, Haribol, Haribol, and then just with some feeling, and then our hands were just joining hands, and we were dancing And somehow we were feeling that Jamuna, she had gone where she wanted to go. And for a little moment we felt a little joyful in a sad way, like sad joy. So then we finished that kirtan, about 1 hour kirtan there, and Dina recited the pranams. And then we all stood and we held hands together, and each one of us went around, 9 of us, the 9 adults, there was 10, but one was a little baby. And we said, what it was special that Jamuna meant, what stood out for Jamuna in our lives. And for myself, it was her great oceanic depth of character. She never did anything superficially, and she herself was never superficial. I remember one time on our way down to San Francisco, we stopped along the coast, and the ocean's on one side of the road, and Jamuna was just sitting very still, watching the ocean and listening to the ocean. And I was just struck with how deeply attentive she was to her surroundings, and how that she was really somehow very present at that moment, observing the activity of the ocean. And as I watched her mature in her Krishna consciousness from a distance, because she was like the banyan tree and I was like some little fleck of grass down below there. But this maturity deepened and deepened. And so this depth, the ocean is deep, Jamuna was deep like that ocean. And her Krishna consciousness was always very deep. And she liked nothing more than to pull other people in deeper into practicing Krishna consciousness, encouraging them, encouraging all of us in that way. After our little round-robin session, we offered obeisances, Vanchakalpa, Trubhistra, Kripa Sindhu, Vicha, Patitanam, Pavambhyo, Vaishnavyo, Namo Namaha. And then we went back to their little ashram, Radhabani Bihari's ashram, and somehow or other, almost magically, some prasadam appeared prepared by Shruti Rupa, assisted by Radha. And we all agreed that Yamuna would have approved of this offering. It was very nice. And following that, we had a heartfelt bhajan by Narottam Das Thakur, followed by the bhajan, Oh Hey Vaishnavi Thakur. And then we took a walk on the beach. By then it was really late into the day, sunset was coming. And we took a walk along the beach, quietly chanting, remembering, lamenting, and rejoicing that, Jamuna, everything she did was first class, including her departure. Going in a way without any fanfare, without any obstacles, her hand in her bead bag, chanting the holy name. One god's sister, her name was mentioned here when it said Jamuna recommended these 3 girls to be initiated, Monique, so she became Mandakini. And she was really Jamuna's protege. So she wrote a little note. And she's a French girl and she's living in France. She said, in France we have a saying, la main dans la bouche, who says the hand in the bag. So in French it means to catch a thief. You catch the thief with the hand in the bag. So she said, our Krishna has come and he has caught her like a thief with her hand in the bag. Chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Caught her with her hand in the bag to call her back, back home, back to Godhead. So, if you go online, there are some wonderful, you can put Jamuna remembrances from Krishna Balaram Mandir. There's almost 6 hours of really powerful remembrances from devotees who were there, and they did 6 hours in the morning, 6 hours in the evening, and then you can actually hear it. It gets, I don't know how it works, but you you get in there and you can hear it, and it's well recorded. Go to Giriraj Swami's website. He has some wonderful remembrances, and other devotees also. If you go into Dandabats, there Ajamil has put like a little conference together, so many different devotees have sent in their tributes and their recollections. So it's very good to meet such a soul. And even though you cannot personally go up and meet her, especially now, you can still meet her. You understand the difference, Vani and Vapu. So her Vapu form is there. There's many wonderful pastimes, many amazing pastimes that show her contribution to this society, to Srila Prabhupada, and the depth of her relationship with Srila Prabhupada, and how she was never deterred from this path of bhakti. So just like we honor departed Vaishnavas, saintly Vaishnavas, we honor Jamuna Devi Dasi. And I hope that in your lives you will come closer to Srila Prabhupada through your service to your spiritual master, and by studying the lives of contemporary souls like Jamuna Devi Dasi, become inspired to go deeper in your own Krishna consciousness. So it's now late, and I know tomorrow many of you have to go to work, so I apologize for this, and thank you very much. Hare Krishna. And if there's any quick questions that you want to ask, I can. Probably want to say a particular prayer. Sorry, Vijaya. Yeah. I was in Paris. He asked where I was when Srila Prabhupada departed. Srila Prabhupada had come to London, and then his health failed dramatically and he went back to India. But we were under the conviction that he was going to get better and come back, and the next place he would come would be Paris. He'd promised to come to Paris and Gita Nagari. So we were there. I had spent the entire day running around the entire of Paris trying to find a chair that could sit in the bathtub, that he could sit in that chair and take his bath, because we understood that his, even if he got better, his health would be difficult. And we didn't know about orthopedic appliances, that you could go to a store and buy this kind. So I was going to normal furniture stores, and at the end of the day I couldn't find a chair that you could put in the bathtub and pour water over it that had sides on it. And I walked into the door of the temple, and Rue Le-Sur was at that time in Rue Le-Sur, and the phone rang. And without even knowing it, I've had a instant premonition what that phone call was, and I turned to my associate. I said, "You answer the phone," because I couldn't bear to take that news. But she took the phone call and confirmed that Srila Prabhupada had departed. So immediately, whoever was there, we went into the temple room in front of Radha Paraseshwara, and we were attempting to hold a kirtan, but it was such a, we were so bewildered and so devastated that the best way I can describe that kirtan, it was like a pitiful kirtan. We were just trying to chant, but we were just, completely smashed. And because we honestly, even though we heard it day after day, birth, death, disease, old age, we just somehow didn't think it was really going to happen to Prabhupada. And of course, on the spiritual platform, there is no death. We understand that. But still, the association of such a personality can't be taken lightly. And you want to take that association not by just sitting there, like Prabhupada would tell the disciples sometimes, you go. You're sitting like a mosquito on the lap of the king. What is a mosquito? He's so close to the king, right on his lap, but he simply bites. go do something. He wanted us to do something, go out and preach. So, at the same time, when there's the opportunity for association, we shouldn't be shy to get it. And beyond, what does that mean, to get association? Just to sit and to look at the person or hear them? No, we should serve the person. And through service we will really begin to understand what is Krishna consciousness. Serving Krishna means serving the Vaishnavas. This is understood. But intellectually it has to be understood in a practical way. Okay. So where's our host? You want to say anything or?
He's deferring to me. Should we get this point? Will you be available here, or are you going to go to your room? Will you stay out here with the devotees? Well, if you like, they'll have prasadam. Malati will be here. You can sit informally and ask some questions and take advantage of this association. Again, thank you so much. We hope to get you back here again sometime and enlighten us into how to please Srila Prabhupada and how to serve. And thank you for without your service, we wouldn't be here now. So we're totally in your debt. And thank you so much.
That's who's me.
I don't think so.
He would just make it. We were faulty puppets. One time, one devotee said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I'm simply your puppet." He made a grant. "I'm simply your puppet." Prabhupada said, "Yes. I want you to dance this way, and you are dancing that way." But we should, we should try in these lessons take the intent and learn the lesson so that we're not faulty puppets.
Bhajamana Hore Vinandanandana Vaye Charanara Vindare